Okay, in this video, I'll be going over how to create a frequency distribution and a histogram in Excel. So first I've started by copying over some data from the previously used housing data sheet here, and I've written out what's called Sturge's law and some other things here. So the first thing you need to do to create a frequency distribution is know how many bins you want to create, and the concept of a bin will make sense more if you don't already know later when we do this thing. So first thing we need is the total number of observations. So I'm going to use the equals count function and select the A column. So we got 787 observations here. The number of bins, that one can follow Sturge's law. So I'm going to write out 1 equals 1 plus 3.322 asterisk for multiplication, and then log, which there's an Excel function for. And then I'm just going to click the box for n, and that'll automatically fill it there. So this number, I guess I should have shown, originally it was 10.62, etc. You want to round this number to the nearest whole number that is above it. So if it was 10.3, I would still round to 11 in this case. And again, this number of bins will make sense in a little bit here. But the next thing we need is the minimum, maximum, and bin interval. So for the minimum, there's an Excel function for that. So you type in equals min, and again, that's first column. And then for max, you type in equals max, and then that first column. For the bin interval, that is essentially the difference between the maximum and the minimum divided by your number of bins. So again, I'm going to go ahead and hide that back down to 11. I'm going to type this out as basically the difference between the maximum minus the minimum divided by the number of bins. I'm going to just type out 11 because you want a whole number in this case. You don't want a decimal. So that's our bin interval. And okay, so once you get this information, you can start on the frequency distribution. Your bin count is, in this case, you just go on down the line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and instead of 11, I'm going to put more. And again, that'll make more sense in a little bit. For the bin range, you want to start with your bin interval. So what this does is basically when you're creating a frequency distribution or a histogram, your first bin is what they're called. The range for that, the maximum value for that is shown here. So basically in the first bin is all of the square footage floor area values ranging from 0 to 1400 basically. And then for the second one, you want to create a formula based on this one. So I'm going to put equals your bin range plus, and I'm going to type this again. And if you press F4, it'll create these $signs here. Basically, that'll make sense in a little bit here. But once you do that, you're essentially saying the second range is twice the bin range. And then what you can do, if you create the formula just like this, you can use the black square at the bottom right and click and drag all the way down to the almost the end here. And what this does is, if you look at the formula bar here, the ones with the dollar sign, so the D9 stays the same, but Excel will automatically change the left value and add 1 to each term. So you're essentially taking whatever number you start with and adding on that 1,442 each time. So you go all the way down the line. And then your maximum value for the more should be your maximum value for the entire data set. So if you create a frequency distribution like this, you know all of your values are included because you're starting with 0 and ending up with your maximum value here. Okay, so now once we have all of that information, we can use that to create the actual frequency distribution and the histogram for this data set. So go over to the Data tab and select Data Analysis. If you haven't installed that already, go ahead and go to I posted a document in the course files that has a link that outlines how to do that there. But I'm going to click on Data Analysis, go to this histogram, click OK. Now my input range, I'm going to select that entire first column. My bin range, I'm going to select all the way from bin range to the 10th value here. And make sure you check labels. Since you selected the entire column in A, you included the floor square foot box, and same thing with the bin range here. And then make sure you check chart output. And for the output range, I'd select output range and then choose whichever box you want it to show up in. I'm going to choose this F7 here and then hit OK. And Excel will create an official frequency distribution. So again, this is basically saying from 0 to 1,442 square foot, there were 234 observations. So this frequency distribution is based off of all of this bin count, bin range data here, and of course the floor square foot area. So once you look at the histogram itself, you'll kind of notice that pretty much most of the data is centered around the first 3 bins. That's not exactly what we want in a histogram. It's an accurate representation, but we can do better, essentially. So, and again, if you notice in this frequency tab here, you notice that there's 234 in the first bin, 442 in the second, 94, and then it drastically drops from there. So with histograms and frequency distributions in Business 221 at least, there's a lot of leeway in terms of what you have is your bin range and your bin count, how you display your histogram essentially. Because essentially that More tab takes into account all of the values from 144,002 or 14,428 all the way up until the max. So what we want to do then is create a better histogram based on that'll get a more accurate distribution of our data. So what I would do is I would look at these first 3 bins and see that the majority of the data points fall within these 3 bins. So I'm going to select you could select anywhere from, basically what you're trying to do is select a new maximum value, quote unquote, not the actual maximum, but a new maximum such that your data will look better. Again, that'll make more sense when I go through it. I'm going to select 5,000. You could have select 4,500. That's essentially, the reason I chose 5,000 is, again, because most of the data is in these first three bins. So my new bin range could be an even number above this 4,300 here. So again, 4,500 probably would have worked well as well, but I chose 5,000 because if I choose my bin interval now, I'm going to do this 5,000 divided by, in this case, 10. And I didn't really need to type that in, but the reason I chose 10 here will make sense in a second here. So essentially I'm doing this whole thing again with a second iteration. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And sorry for that. And I'm going to paste it down below here. And delete all of these guys in here. So now, instead of the bin range being a function of the interval of 1400, now it's going to be a function of our new bin range of 500. So I'm going to create a similar formula like before, where I basically add on these, and if I do F4 again, that creates the dollar signs here. And then I'm going to copy that all the way down. And I'm going to write in this maximum value here. You don't actually use it in your data set, but it's good to see. So, and yeah, again, once you get here, you're essentially doing the same thing you did to create this plot. You click on data analysis and the histogram, hit OK. Your input range is that same column A. Now your bin range, though, instead of D8 through D18 would be here. And labels should be checked, chart output should be checked, and instead of putting all that data at F7, I'm going to put it at F22. Oops. There. Hit OK, and Excel will do this for you. So yeah, if we look at the histograms for the first iteration versus the second iteration, you'll notice the second one is much more evenly distributed between the bins here. So we like the second one better in Business 221 because it gives us more to work with, really. So again, and then with the frequency, it tells you that still most of the data, before you knew that most of the data was between 1400 and 2800, now you know most of the data is still in that range, but you can break it down even further into, 1500 to 2000 or 2000 to 2500 and so on. So that's how you create a frequency distribution and histogram in Excel.